expenses you didn't know were write-offs. So, hi Dana, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Dion.
Nice. It was really exciting to get to see you for the little bit that I did at the One Rental at a Time event in Vegas. I would have liked to have spent more time with everybody, but of course I had the plague and was trying not to get everyone sick. Um, I'll start with before using Hemlane and for my properties that aren't yet on the Hemlane platform. Because what I did is when I had a tenant turnover or when I got new tenants, I would uh, use Hemlane. I
Yep.
haven't gone to my existing tenants because I have a couple that have flip phones and no interwebs at their house, and I'm not going to make them get the internet to, do the change. But um, I track expenses with a spreadsheet that my CPA and I made together. So I put on there what I needed to know. I needed to be able to look up how much I spent at each property in a given year. And the
Yep.
CPA needed all the tax info that I don't even want to understand.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants that spreadsheet, it is at diontalk.com. There's a free course for the binder strategy. Now, the binder strategy is how I get my tenants to ask me to raise the rent. But in that course, which I give for free, you can download my spreadsheet and it has all of the columns that the CPA guy needed and all of the information that I needed too. That's all for free. So I tend to probably track too many things and then I let the CPA filter out what might not be an expense.
Yeah.
But with the last count was 28,000 units and over 4,000 landlords or owners
Yeah.
on the Hemlane
20
platform.
29,000 now, Dion.
Nice. Yeah, I love to see it when it grows. I'm having a good time with it. It's made some things really simple. I had a tenant turnover, I think December, and I really like just putting the information in once, putting it out on all the platforms, and getting all of the demand that way. Um, what do you think are some write-offs that owners don't always think about?
I love that question. And to back it up, I know a lot of you don't have a finance degree. I'm a recovering financial analyst. I actually started in finance. And so I love that because there's a couple of things. One, real estate is like conservative, as you guys know, in a great way to have that passive income and have stable, steady investment. Whereas, like, you put it into a stock and you are reliant on some company and their CEO and how they're running the company. Um, so I love it. At the same time, I think expenses and really running your P&L and really understanding what your cap rate is on this, what your ROI is, like all of these things that really matter, I think are really important to do. And spreadsheets are great. I actually love Excel. I use it for every day, every part of my life. But I also hate manual data entry. And so I think that when you think about tracking your expenses and stuff, using Hemlane to do it, it's free, or using anything else that would be free to do it but can automate it is delightful. Um, Dion, to answer your question of what you can write off, this is where it's interesting because you really need to categorize everything because when you look at how your property is performing, there may be certain line items that you say, "Hey, I want to take these out when I look at the performance versus I want to have these in there." And let me give you an example. Dion, if you are going out and out to a lunch with, let's just say, your accountant and talking about your rental property and stuff like that, those are certain things that, and you always talk to your accountant. I'm not an accountant, but talk to them because there's those types of things that you can write off and actually keep the receipt, upload that to say, hey, this actually had to do with my rental property. Um, Driving to and from the rental property and your mileage, certain things like that. And then there's, in my opinion, the biggest thing that everyone forgets about from a write-off perspective. And Dion, can you guess what that is?
No, not the biggest one to write off. Maybe the home office is the one that I think most people forget.
Yeah, home office. I love that one. What I was going to talk about, and there's a certain way to write it off, is your time. Your time is worth so much more than anything else because, and this is actually why I really like lawyers. Okay, I hate lawyers, but I also love them. Lawyers are the only trade that I've ever seen Where when you're talking to a lawyer, you can tell they're sitting there thinking about how much they could have earned in billable hours because they are hourly. And it's the same thing in your real estate, that your time is going to be worth everything. And so when you start to think, a lot of times I hear like, property management is so expensive or a property manager is so expensive. And one of my questions, well, how much time are you spending on your rental properties and times that by your hourly rate? And like, is a property manager more or less than that, right? And so the reason I bring that up is then you need systems, you need processes to scale so that that time goes down. But there's something called real estate professional status. And I highly recommend that everyone talk to their accountant about it if you have a significant other who has a W-2, because that is where you're going to be able to say, I am managing my rental properties. I can write off that against my significant other's W-2, and you can get a lot more back in taxes. I'm going to pause there because that was a lot. What questions do you have for me, Dion?
It was. I want to break down in case there's somebody that's really new. When you
Yeah.
mentioned tracking the expenses and having a profit and loss, so you just said P&L.
Oh, sorry.
Um,
Yes.
that's okay. When you track the data, you can actually see if an asset performs by looking up your P&L, right? And I
Yeah.
ran a business for the last 10 years before retiring, and it was always about how can I pull a report? How can I see what's functioning, what's working, what we need to either eliminate or optimize. And it's really nice to be able to pull up your rentals, and I'll use this spreadsheet as just a simple way of doing it. You have a tab for income and a tab for expenses on my spreadsheet.
Hmm.
And all of the columns are the things that I needed, so I can look up the expenses I had on each property. But all
Yep.
the columns are that the CPA needed, like what was the tax, what was it assigned to, and in the notes, what is it actually? Because there's different types of write-offs. And then with the P&L, I can look and go, okay, this overall I'm making money, but this one property is losing money. Matt, the lumberjack landlord, had a triplex that had turnover after turnover after
Yeah.
turnover. And he was able to look at a couple of years data and go, yeah, I need to sell that property. And if you don't break it down to where you can look at your income and expenses per asset, you might not know that one of them is destroying all of your profitability and the others are performing so well that if you can then make adjustments. And then that thing about tracking your time, I just did a video with a lumberjack landlord on cost segregation studies on why he's done them and why I haven't. And one of them is he had a high income job, but his spouse had stopped working to take care of the properties. She qualified as a real estate professional.
Hmm.
And so a cost segregation study would get them a six-figure tax return because of the cost segregation studies, her being a real estate professional, being able to use that against his W-2 income. Didn't work for me because I don't have the spouse. I definitely don't work 751 hours in real estate, and I definitely didn't work more in real estate than I did at my W-2.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing to me with the cost segregation was Matt's portfolio is so large and he's adding more that he always has new depreciation schedules. If you do a cost segregation study, it takes 25% or so of your depreciation in that 1 year, which
Hmm.
only leaves 75% of your depreciation for the rest of the schedule. So I've avoided doing that because I want the full depreciation over all 27 and a half years. And that's why this is such a confusing topic that I wouldn't go to YouTube University and educate myself and file my taxes. I would hire a pro. It'd be like going to YouTube, watching a couple
Yeah.
videos and trying to do your roof.
Yeah.
There's a little more involved than you're going to get there. So hire a CPA. And a simple example is staying on top of things. In 2022, in order to spur the economy, basically all meals became a 100% write-off. Currently, it's back down to where they're 50% write-off and have to be related to your business. In 2022, it was just blanket. If you ate
Yeah.
out, record the thing. Well, who's staying on top of those tax changes? Not me, the CPA is. I know on my spreadsheet, I record every meal. There could be a year where none of them are a write-off. And I keep the receipts and I put the names of who was there. And then, yes, if anyone knows me, I have never had a meal where we didn't talk real estate. There wasn't some exchange of knowledge going on. I wouldn't be there. So, uh, have a CPA to stay on top of the things. Understand there's a couple of comments here. Your phone is a write-off. And what people will do is they'll often think, well, it's my
Someone.
personal phone. I can't write that off. Well, what percentage of your personal phone was used for business? And for me, it ends up being about 15% me, 85% rentals and real estate. Uh, your miles that you drive, yes, but your fuel receipts, are people recording both of those? Because fuel can be a write-off and the miles are a write-off because you have the use of your vehicle. If your vehicle is a certain weight, I forget what it is, 6,000 something pounds, then there's a whole nother category of write-off that it goes into if it's used for your business. So tracking that, it's really hard because I actually have a friend doing their taxes right now, and they're kind of struggling because the CPA is not going to ask you for these things. They don't know if you have crypto. They don't know if you run a business. They don't know
Yeah.
if you have rentals. You have to provide the data, all of it, and let them filter through what is needed and what isn't needed. So that's why for me, for a long time, the spreadsheet was very simple, the way to go. But there are platforms like Hemlane where you can put in the expenses, you can put in the data. And so Dana, if somebody's using the platform to do that, is the information, there's probably a better term, extractable?
Yeah. You can
How does
download
that work?
everything. You can download everything. You can download it just at the line item, like transaction level. You can download it at the property level. You can download it at the unit level. You can download it at a portfolio level or like all of your properties. So you can do that. I think the big thing, Dion, that I love that you just brought up is exactly that of track everything. And then you have a line that says like meals and you have a line that says mileage, and then you pass it to your accountant, and they will love you for that. Because I can't tell you, it was interesting, Dion. We went through the process of auto categorization. So basically, looking at, hey, can we take Dion's expenses and auto categorize them into travel, this, that, to make Dion's life easier, right? That way you don't have to do work. It syncs from your bank account or your credit card, pulls all the transactions, and then it tells you what they each are. Guess what percentage of the time that was correct?
I can't imagine it was very high.
It was only 60%. And so then our development team came back and said, hey, listen, these are the numbers and the data from what our, it's like a alpha group of discovery users said versus here's what's actually correct of what they said this category should be. And now we're kind of thinking about like how to use AI to help with that or other things to look up what really is this category and how do we get you to approve it. And so for the same thing as with your accountant, just like auto categorization, your accountant is not going to know what Uncle Ben's is. They don't know if that's a restaurant. They don't know if that was a gas station. They have no idea. And so by you just slowly going through from your phone or from your computer and just categorizing each one of these expenses, syncing your bank account up, then you can have all of that in there. You can drag and drop your receipts in, etc. All of that will just help so that you can even just give your accountant access to the account and say, here you go. You get it, access to the accounting side of it, the financial side. You export things, you see all the receipts in there, etc. It is very important to keep your receipts as well. It's like if you ever get audited, you're like, thank you. I have everything here. Everything is professional, and the auditors just go away. If you don't, and you're like scrummaging through paperwork and saying like, I don't have it, I just have my statement, it's going to cause a lot of red flags with the auditors.
Yeah, there's kind of two levels with the auditors. I had an audit, I think it was 2016 or 17, and I pay the extra amount with my CPA every year, somewhere like 145 bucks or something, to where if I'm audited, they handle it
Yeah.
and I don't have to
Okay,
pay
great.
anything extra. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like an insurance. So I've paid it every year and not been audited, so they make more money. Great. But that one year, I basically just said, here is everything. Tell me when it's over.
Yeah.
They might have reached out for something else. And so here's a bit of advice if you're recording your data, sometimes late in the year, something can change and now you have something you want to write off, but you don't remember what the expenses were. Most banks online, so even the big ones like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, they keep 12 months worth of data available on their website,
Hmm.
which means next February or March, when you start getting your taxes together, because April 15th is the deadline, if you start putting your annualized taxes together and you realize every month I had an expense that I would like to write off, but you weren't recording it, you've lost January and February because you're looking in March or April. They only keep 12 months worth of data. So right now, today, go online to your bank, download your statement for January, put it in a file and keep it there.
Mhm.
Then record February and all the way through the year, at least the first few months, so that next year when you go to do your taxes and you have to go to your bank and go, okay, what did I pay for the water bill on this
Yeah.
property every month? And I forgot, okay, well, I actually have the data for those first couple of months. And that'll save you a big headache of just kind of guessing
Yeah.
at the end, which you
Yeah.
don't want to do.
I love that.
There's how extensive is the service network with Hemlane? Are there any markets which Hemlane doesn't have vetted contractors? I'd like to discuss, chat about that a bit to learn more. And Chester, you're investing outside of Detroit, I think. Live in DC, invest in Detroit, and I think I could be getting that wrong because I talk to Frank every now and then, and he invests in like 19 different markets, so I
Yeah.
don't remember where everybody's at. But where does Hemlane not have the really good coverage on contractors?
Yeah, there's a lot of places we don't. They're tend to be rural. And it has to do with one, where our customers are and what network we've built up, how many times we've sent out people, and then overall how many people are in that area. So let me give you an example. Let's just say we are in a place like Sleepy Eye, Minnesota. Okay. Population 5,000. Even if we have someone there who came on the platform and has maybe they have 10 units there, we still wouldn't tell you we could service your units there because one, they've brought their service professionals in, but there's only one plumber in the town or one electrician. That is too much risk for us. One, we cannot get price negotiation for you. If we find this person price gouging and we have that on there, we have no option B. And that's scary for us. And so we look for one, like kind of as a rule of thumb, if the MSA is over 100,000, we will have a network, we will have demand, et cetera, for you. But anything below the 100,000, if you go through our platform and you add your property, it will tell you what package you can be on. If the complete package is grayed out, it means that we don't have the service professional network for you. And so one, we look at, some places are up and coming. So it's like, 50 or 60,000, but there are a lot of technicians in that area. So service professionals, and we see there are a ton. We can negotiate prices with them of saying like, how much is this one? How much is this one? How much is this one? Okay, this one's the best. This is second best. We can kind of go through our process. And we see a lot of real estate investors moving to that area, then great, we'll be able to service it. But kind of the rule of thumb would be 100,000 in population is a little bit where I see kind of the line of where we draw it.
I think with taxes and recording your expenses, I mean, there's a couple levels. One, you want to know how much money you're spending.
Yep.
You can't tell if a property is profitable or not unless you know how much money you're putting into it. So you need to track the data for yourself. But then tracking the data for taxes actually becomes pretty challenging. And this is why the CPA is so important. And when we record the data,
Hmm.
you want to be fairly accurate because we'll get the questions of, I bought a property in October. I worked on it until February, and then I rented it out. Are my write-offs from October, November, and December something I can use, even though I
Yeah.
had no rental income that year?
Yeah.
Right. And so that becomes well, you need to know with the CPA because maybe it's a write-off, but they can't use it till the next year against that income, or maybe it's not a write-off. And so these are things, especially with taxes. I don't want to know those things. I want to make the decision of because there would be people who say, well, if I buy it in October and I can't use the write-offs until, or I can't use them because I won't have rental income this year, then I won't buy the property. They're letting the tax benefits make the
Yeah.
decision. It's the tax tail wag the dog, right? And so I just record the data, give it to the CPA. So the recording of the information is what's most important because you'll get a lot of questions of, is this a write-off? And that's the wrong question. every expense you have, the question should be, how do I make this a write-off?
Right off. Yeah.
And so let's go over kind of a list of things that people can write off as landlords.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you name one, I'll name one. What's
Okay.
one thing that you can write off as a landlord people might not think of?
Okay, first one that you can write off. Well, I was gonna take one of yours. Oh, I'll start with my biggest one, which was your time, which I had started with.
Okay, so you can write off your time if you qualify for that real estate professional status. There's actually a lot of benefits that come with that. Uh, for me, it is your home office space. It's generally around 100 square feet, and you can actually give that information. If you don't tell your CPA, I do my work at my house. I have a section of my house that has a desk. I provide internet for it. I provide electricity for it. I provide heat for it. So all of these expenses that are related to that portion of your house becomes a write-off because we know our rentals are write-offs. The expense of the interest, the insurance, the taxes. You have a standard deduction for where you live. You don't get to write off all of the same expenses from where you live, but you do get to write off that home office.
All right. My next one is Hemlane subscription. You can write off software costs.
Right, software costs. I've tried to figure out how to write off the games that I play, but I haven't got that yet.
Not yet,
Um,
but if you ask the right question of how do I get my games written off, you
I
might get there. It's
which
a real
yeah,
estate
and
game.
so there was a time when my games were a side hustle, and so the subscriptions could have counted against that income. Again, how do you turn it into a write-off? I think this would be my question for your CPA. If you put a window in a rental, it's very easy to assign the materials, the labor, the permit cost to that rental. But what if you buy a chop saw? This is a tool you're going to use at all of your rentals. There are people who don't know how to write off the tool, so they won't record that they bought the tool. They'll literally go, I didn't buy it for a rental. I bought it for all my rentals. Your CPA knows how to write off tools against your entire portfolio. So make sure you're writing off things that you'll use more than once that you're not assigning to a specific rental.
I love that. My next one is repairs and maintenance. Every type of repair that you do to the property, you can write off. And then remember the difference. If you don't know this, you can look this up. Capital expenses, and those get depreciated. So I think there's, and then the depreciation you can go ahead and write off as well. But on the maintenance and repair side, everything from there.
Yeah, that's really important when you put in the note section, what is it? Because your CPA doesn't know what flashing is. But if you
Yeah.
say I had roof repair done and it included flashing, they'll know that's roof. They'll know what category that goes in. Uh, there's a comment here, write off your one rental at a time expenses, your plane, hotel, ground. That's education, goes into the education, ongoing education for your field of investing. Uh, the meals thing, that's a big one. I'm not always on top of how much of the meal is a write-off. I do know that you're not supposed to, so most years you're not just supposed to write off that you ate out, right? The pandemic thing where they tried to spur the economy and they just said 100% of meals, no matter the reason, write it off. That's great, take advantage of it. But we don't always have that. So record the meals, write down the names of the people that you ate your meal with. That is somehow a conversation related to your real estate. If you have a YouTube channel, and several of the people in the comments here do, your travel, if you make YouTube videos, can be used against your YouTube income. I haven't, it's too much of a gray area for me to push this, but I traveled to Portugal. I spent 2 months in Portugal, uh, in the Algarve looking to buy properties. Now, if I purchased a property there and had rental income, that entire expense, that entire trip would have been a write-off against that income. I didn't use my Portugal trip, learning the market, looking for properties against my real estate income in the United States. I think prison is the ultimate house hack, but it's not my chosen form of retirement. So if you're traveling for real estate, like my brother has rentals in California, rentals in Washington, so going back and forth, everything he does for that is a write-off.
Yeah.
If I travel to Texas and look at a market, look to buy something, I might take the travel and expenses and give it to the CPA and say, this is all the expenses from going to Texas when I was looking for properties, but I didn't find any. They'll know if they can write off any of that or not. They'll know what changed each year to figure that out. Looks like your camera doesn't like you right now.
I know. Sorry about that.
It's okay. So expense write-offs for business meals, 50% currently. Yep, Jester, that's absolutely right.
My next one was mortgage interest. And so being able to write off the interest against your mortgage, because debt is one of the things that I think as a real estate investor, if you can leverage debt, everyone always thinks of debt as bad, but in our world, it's good. You can write off the mortgage interest.
Yeah, the mortgage interest is a write-off. And whenever you buy a property, the closing documents that you get, it's going to be a stack about that thick, unless you pay cash, then it's 5 pieces of paper. But if you have a mortgage, it's going to be this thick. The first couple of pages, for some reason, they're 18-inch long, not, regular size paper.
Yeah.
It has the closing information. Send that to your CPA because is buying down your interest rate a write-off? Is your home inspection a write-off? Is the appraisal cost a write-off? Is the mobile notary to sign your stuff, the $200 for that, a write-off? So that's all of the things off of that. Those two sheets of paper at the very front of your closing documents, your CPA can go through there. They'll look at the information to start your depreciation schedule. They'll look at the information to figure out what's a write-off. We, as the investor, don't need to know what is a write-off. We
Yeah.
just need to know, how do I get the data in a recordable fashion? How do I send it to the CPA? So one of the things that I really think that people don't often think of is sending their purchase closing documents to their CPA.
I love that one so much. My next one is losses. So tenant damages, if those costs exceed the security deposit, in some cases, talk to a tax professional, unpaid rent. You can also consider those losses as expense.
This is a good one from Laura Samanyongo. Thank you, Laura. Always looking forward to our conversations with Dana. Me too. I'm excited every
Sure.
time you come on. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge. Her CPA says she can't write off her home office because she has a property manager, even though I have to manage the PM 2.5 hours away. I would check with another CPA and see if that's true. Now, the CPAs do know more than us, and they probably know how to categorize it. You still run a business. Laura, I know that you haven't always used your property management for repairs. I think you mentioned once or twice in comments where you ended up hiring the repairs done because you can get it done either faster or better than the property manager was. Maybe it was not explained clearly to the property manager that you run the business from home.
Mhm.
So that's a good one to look up. And that's why we always check with the CPAs is
Yeah.
because I don't know those rules. I know that kind of like the interest is a write-off. I would never want to have a mortgage for the write-off, right? You pay $1,000 in interest so you can save $300 in taxes. That math doesn't ever make sense. But the benefits from having a mortgage, getting the levered appreciation, levered depreciation, uh, then the interest benefits, right? So I want
Yeah.
mortgages for the asset protection, for the levered impact, um, and then take advantage of the write-offs from interest. Other write-offs that people often forget or don't know about it. This is a good one. I would have to go through my list. I almost want to pull up my thing and say, "Oh, look at all the things I wrote off." But uh, if you have a rental where you are paying the utilities or the water, make sure you're writing that off. And in my case, I have some municipalities where the water has to be billed to the owner no matter what. They won't bill the tenants. So electricity, heat, or anything is always in the tenants' names, but the water is in my name. Well, that's a write-off. I claim the income. The tenant pays me if I charge a flat rate fee for the water, but I also have the expense. So any utilities that are in your name, when you have a tenant turnover, you're going to have, hopefully, you have what's called a landlord policy with your utility company. So that if a tenant moves out and turns off the
Yes.
power, when I show up or the handyman shows up or the contractor shows up, there's power there to do whatever they need to do to fix the place. But for those months, utilities in your name. Make sure you track that and write it off.
Yeah. And sometimes this is wish utility companies would change this. There's certain areas where they charge you a fee, even if you have a landlord policy with the utility company, they'll charge you a fee to like turn it back or like change the name. And so in those cases, that's obviously a write-off too.
Yep. And I think that's the most important thing with these write-offs is record all of your expenses because we might not think it's a write-off, or we might think it's a write-off. Then you send it to the CPA and they'll tell you if it is or isn't. In this case with Laura, maybe it isn't
Yeah.
in that case. And in the case with meals, if you weren't recording your meals and sending it in, you didn't get the 100% write-off 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You're not getting the 50% write-off now. And who knows what it's going to be in the future. And then the CPAs stay on top of the changes like the Trump tax cuts that were set to go away in 2026. Looks like they've been extended now. Uh, I don't want to focus on those kind of things. That's why recording the data to me is more important than understanding the data. I want to hire a
Yeah.
pro who understands the data.
Yeah.
Nice.
I love it.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we got through any of the questions that were in the chat. I hope everybody has a week full of amazing. I use the same contract as the PM, but the contractor prefers to work with me because I pay right away. Does Hemline service the east coast of Florida, Ocala, Melbourne, Orlando area?
We do. We do. I actually have a rental in Ocala on Hemlane as well. So I can tell you we do service that area, then obviously Orlando and the big cities too.
Nice. I like it. I don't think there's that many places that Hemline doesn't serve in the US. It was related to that question
Just
earlier of maybe you don't
contractors.
provide
Yeah.
some services in the more rural areas. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can use our essential package and put your own contractors in, which we will just use for your property. So you can use the essential package and put your own contractors in, and that's nationwide. It's only if you want our network of service professionals who we vet, look through the pricing, et cetera. That's where it's only in certain geographies. Yeah.
There's an interesting question here from Chester because I'm wondering where he's going with it. Dana, do you have Calendly?
Yes, I do have Calendly, and this is really interesting because I'm such a so just for those who don't know, Calendly is like a hey, book a meeting with me. Here's my calendar, and then it just shows the times you're available. Someone can reschedule, cancel, etc. It's just a more efficient way to have people quickly book a time with you rather than being like, do these 3 times work? I was trying to consolidate it because I also have Boomerang. I also have HubSpot and I also have Google Mail, and all 4 of them all have calendars, right? The same functionality as Calendly. So it's like maybe I can get rid of that and use the other. So I A/B tested it, and all of them have some functionality that is just not quite as good as Calendly. And so for that reason, I've stayed on Calendly. It just seems to be an easier way to manage calendars. But what I love about it is there's some people who hate they say like, "Oh, I hate when someone sends me their calendar when I want to meet with them and they send me their calendar and say book with me." They're like, "I'd rather talk to their admin." And I'm like, but I don't need an admin. I could just give you my calendar and it's faster than you and my admin doing 4 emails back and forth. And so interestingly, I'm a fan of it. I know there's a lot of like guys on Wall Street that are like, oh, someone sent me their calendar link. That's so annoying. But I personally think it's a more efficient way to do business.
I have Calendly at diontalk.com where people can book hours.
Yeah.
And I almost want to say for me it's frustrating. For you, you're very organized and you set up the meetings when we're going to have this in the future and everything. For me, it's like I don't want to know what I'm doing next week because I have no idea what I'm going to feel like doing any day of the week. So I literally, if somebody books an hour or whatever, I do post it, phone reminder, email, set an alarm because the Calendly won't be enough to remind me to go there and do it. Uh,
Okay. That's so interesting.
Is there a plan where I can list the rental, run the tenant check through, and that is it? How much is it cost for that? From Michelle.
That's free, Michelle. You can do that today on Hemlane, and that's free. That does not cost you anything.
Yeah, that I think you came up with that about 6 months ago, the free version.
Yeah, the starter plan. It was a huge need. I think there's a lot of people in real estate, especially just getting started that are like, I don't know if I need full software quite yet or full functionality. And then you experience it, and then hopefully you say, yes, I do need full functionality. But yeah, that came out. Just you're right. Gosh, it wasn't that long ago. It was 9 months ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and Michelle, if you put in the code Dion Talk, that free version is 100% free.
Yes.
Yes. It's 20% off the other version for the first year.
Yes, all the other versions, but put Dion Talk in there anyway, because whenever you upgrade, then you get that 20% off.
Nice. Cool. If the I believe one rental at a time is happening next year, you'll be there for that.
Yes, definitely.
Are you going to BPCon in October?
I'm not going to BBCon.
Okay.
I think some folks from our team will be there. I personally am not going to that one, but a couple other conferences coming up I'll be at.
Nice. This will be my first time at BPCon. I am speaking. They currently just took a vote on they want to be keynote speaker. So I might pin a link in the comments below if anybody would like to hear me be a keynote, because you don't hear me enough on my channel, be the keynote speaker for Big BPCon. I would really appreciate somebody going there and
Jan, if you're
giving me a
keynote
vote.
speaking, I will be there.
Oh, nice. That would be awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. I think the networking opportunity at those things is it's why I like the one rental at a time stuff. It's not always who's presenting, it's who I'm going to talk to in the hallway or who I'm going to talk to in the back room.
Yeah,
There's just I used this in a video last night. I think I'm going to use it going forward, but there's just knowledge shrapnel that happens when you're around people that are just doing the stuff you want to do.
yeah.
You don't even know what you need to ask, and it comes up in conversation. Awesome. I hope to see you back in a few weeks.
Thank you so much for having me, Dion. This was a fun conversation.
Nice. And if anybody wants to get a hold of Dana, it is Dana, Dana, at hemlane.com. You can see Hemlane in the picture there. And I'm always excited when you come. I mean, I've been doing this a decade, but I try to do it in the simplest format with the smallest rentals. So my knowledge base is a tiny sample set
Yeah.
versus you have all of the different people with different size portfolios. There's Michelle. With rent control being a possibility here in Washington, does Hemlane do automatic contract renewal with an automatic rent increase?
Good question. It's not automatic because it does need to be well, they're based on county and state. Not going too much into detail, rent increase notices, there's certain things you need to do, sometimes post to the door, et cetera. There's a lot that goes into the workflow process, let me say. But we do renewals in app. And so you can go through that process and say, here's how much I'm going to increase it by. And any new laws we're continuously putting into the system for you of check these new laws, check this. So we're continuing to develop and put that in to help you to make sure you don't make a mistake. I really wish all government agencies at some point, this will be a passion project of mine, just simplifies it. I feel like, you call this city and they're like, it's CPI plus this, and everyone's like, well, what's CPI? Like, what was that number? They should just make it really simple across states, et cetera, for rent increases and stuff like that, because I do think there's a lot of complexity with it. But either way, yes, you can do the notices in our system and put those together.
So I think our next video together, we're going to cover the topic of rent control.
Oh, I love it.
And so Michelle is here in Washington with me. Michelle, hopefully you're tracking. So the bill made it out of committee. There were some adjustments made to it when it was initially proposed. You had 6 month notice for rent increases. They reduced that to 90 days. They've made several other changes. There was an update sheet that went out yesterday.
Okay.
It looks like it might make it, and it's going to make me a ton of money. It's going to triple my profit, right? I actually literally sent text messages to all the tenants. Hey, this year there's no planned rent increase. Leases renewals would be at exactly the same. Unless
Yeah.
this bill passes, then there has to be a 7% increase. Here's what that 7% increase would be. You're
Yeah.
now notified that if the bill passes, this is the rent increase at renewal.
Yeah.
And so 7% across the board versus zero is a lot more in the
Yeah. It's so short-sighted the government does this, but one day I will be able to hopefully convince those in legislation to rethink and reconsider things because they don't. And to your point, it hurts everyone. So
it hurts everyone. It makes the landlords more money and it makes more tenants homeless. So that's going to be a great topic for us to cover, especially with it looking like it's going to pass here in Washington.
yeah.
And Laura's last comment is she really likes it when you're here. When you talk, she takes notes.
Great. Thanks, Laura.
So do I. These are all the
Awesome.
notes from this conversation of from you being here. So I take notes every time you're on here, and I really appreciate it. Everybody have a week full of amazing.
Thanks so much, Dion. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. And we are
We're
off
off that.
already.
Perfect. That was great. Thanks so much. That was a lot of fun. It's a topic I've never spoken about. Like
Yeah,
on